Hello, my name is Rebecca Siegel. I'm the director of Gross McCleaf Gallery, and I just want to welcome all of you that are here with us in person, and of course, everyone who's joining us on Zoom. I trust that you will enjoy this event, and I want to thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce you to our assistant director. This is Morgan Hobbs. She will walk you through the program a little bit, and we certainly hope to see all of you again here in the gallery. So enjoy.
All right, hello. So like Rebecca said, I'm Morgan Hobbs. I'm the assistant director here at Gross McCleaf. And this is our first of hopefully what will become many interdisciplinary events here. We're really excited to be co-hosting this event with Blue Stoop. Blue Stoop is a community-based hub for the literary arts here in Philadelphia. They offer rigorous classes in the community, or in the craft of writing, free community building programs every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and a monthly reading series that pairs visiting authors with local authors for conversations like these. Also a big thank you to the independent bookstore, The Head in the Hand, for being such a great local bookstore and also being here to sell some of Ilya's books tonight. They have a table in this back gallery that you should stop by before you leave. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things. All of you in our in-person audience have cards that you've likely already found on your seat. So these cards can be used for notes if you'd like, but they are definitely going to be used for any questions that you have at the end of the program. So as soon as Ilya is done reading, we'll take a couple minutes and collect cards with questions on them. Hello to everyone in my virtual world back there. Just a couple quick things for you all. Please stay muted for the entire event. I think I have the settings set that you can't unmute yourself, but don't even try. Also, there are closed captions that are being provided for the event. If you're on a desktop, it should be at the bottom right-hand side of the desktop that you can enable a live transcript. If you're on a mobile device, it is a ... more button that you click, and in that menu, there is an enable live transcript option. It's not perfect, but you know, hopefully it'll help, especially if you're in a noisy place or if you're hard of hearing. Also, during Ilya's reading, feel free to follow along in the PDF of readings provided in the link in the chat. So find that chat. It is a message from Bambi Hegeman, and it should have a link where you can find the readings for tonight. Any general questions for those in the virtual world should go to Bambi as well. And any of your questions for Ilya can go in the chat to Bambi Hegeman, who will provide those questions to us at the end of the reading. One more thing, the event is being recorded and I'll put it on YouTube sometime very soon, and I'll update all of the closed captions just to make sure that everything is correct. And that is all my housekeeping. So anyway, I would now like to welcome James Stewart, who is a wonderful artist with a long history in Philadelphia. He's been showing at Gross McCleaf for a number of years, and he has a wonderful exhibition upstairs that was made in collaboration in some ways with Ilya in reference to his reading. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, definitely make sure you do. It is on view until October 23rd. So anyway, please welcome James Stewart.
Well, first off, poetry has an oral history to it. Painting does not at all. So but it seems kind of strange to be thanking people like if there was an Academy Award or something, but I would like to thank my daughter, Stewart, helped put this together, helped to prep this. Of course, I want to thank Ilya for being enthusiastic throughout this, very positive. And I want to thank Rebecca because initially, Ilya and I, or as this exhibition built, we were thinking that this exhibition could travel around to universities or whatever and talk about the tie between poetry and painting. And I consider them very close cousins. I consider, as much as I love photography, a distant cousin. I truly think poetry is much closer. But we built a proposal then to send to universities and just wasn't getting any bites. And then Rebecca is the new owner of this gallery that I've been with for a lot of years. And I just wanted to say to her that I know I hadn't been sending work in, but I have been working. And I didn't want her to think that I just wasn't doing anything out there. So I sent her the proposal just to say, you know, I have been working and I'll build work and all that. And she got back and said, you know, maybe we'd be interested in this. And I just wasn't thinking of it because it's a commercial gallery and this isn't, I didn't think this would really be a money-making exhibition, but she's embraced it. And I really appreciate that she's gotten behind it, let this happen. And I really appreciate that Ilya would come and read. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, folks, for being here. I hope you're able to hear me okay. I speak with a pretty heavy Russian accent, so by the end of the next 24 hours that we spend together, you will all hopefully also speak with a very heavy Russian accent. But for now, I just want to begin by saying a few things about James and his work, if that's okay with everybody. And I hope you all have the chance to go upstairs and see the art. And if you're seeing it on Zoom, you can see the art on the website for the art gallery. Magic Couture's, where the artist seeks out the luminous detail and presents it without commentary. Therefore, an introduction to any art should be brief. All senses are called seeing, John Donne said. And when I see what James Stewart has done with the story of Deaf Republic in many styles and mediums, I begin to understand what Czeslaw Miłosz meant when he said, quote, preoccupation of poetry is how difficult it is to remain just one person. I have written the story in verse about a community in a time of crisis, about two lovers and loss and tenderness in a moment of misfortune. That's what I wanted to show. But James taught me in terracotta and oil, in wood and wax, how each medium has its own character, can show a different range of human emotion. He has shown me how the same story can be in conversation with an artist from several hundred years ago, just as well as with one's contemporary. And in this way, I'm reminded that although those images might portray a far-off land or a dreamscape, perhaps, there is still a sense of recognition. We gasp because we recognize something in ourselves in these images, a dream that is ours, and not at all unlike what we see around us in these streets, or what we refuse to see around us, although it happens every day. And so I, as at least one person in this room, am tempted to say, this isn't an exhibition, not art exhibition, it's my life. But in the end, art is not about an event, it is an event. And James shows it, yes, with oil and wax and wood and terracotta. He shows how a mystery is enacted by art. For our life is a mystery. And therefore our duty, as Lysian Blaga suggested, is not to explain it, but to deepen it, to transform it into a greater mystery. James Stewart does this for me, and for that I'm grateful. Thank you to everyone at Gross McCleaf Art Gallery for welcoming us, all of us here so warmly, and especially to Rebecca for doing all the work. Thank you. Thank you to brilliant Sara Novic, whose book I love, and I hope you all will love as well. It's a very powerful book. For being in conversation later today. Thank you. And there are quite a few really wonderful writers and poets in this room. Thank you for being here. Okay, sorry for the long introduction. I'll just read some poems if that's okay. I hope you all have a handout you can follow. The first poem is called We Lived Happily During the War. We lived happily during the war. And when they bombed other people's houses, we protested, but not enough. We opposed them, but not enough. I was at my bed. Around my bed, America was fallen. Invisible house by invisible house by invisible house. I took a chair outside and watched the sun. In the 6th month of a disastrous rain, in a house of money, in a street of money, in a city of money, in a country of money, a great country of money. We, 30 of us, lived happily during the war. Dutch Republic. Contrast. Our country is a stage. When soldiers march into town, public assemblies are officially prohibited. But today, neighbors flock to the piano music from Sonia and Alfonso's puppet show in Central Square. Some of us have climbed up into trees. Others hide behind benches and telegraph poles. From Petya, the deaf boy in the front row sneezes. The sergeant puppet collapsed, shrieking. He stands up again, snort, check his fist at the laughing audience. An army jeep swerves into the square, disgorging its own sergeant. Disperse immediately! Disperse immediately! The puppet mimics in a wooden falsetto. Everyone frees except Petya, who keeps giggling. Someone claps a hand over his mouth. The sergeant turns towards the boy, raising his finger. You! You. The puppet raises a finger. So they washes her puppet. The puppet watches the sergeant. The sergeant watches Sonia and Alfonso. But the rest of us watch Petya lean back, gather all the speed in his robe and launch at the sergeant. The sound we do not hear lifts the gas of the water. As soldiers march, Alfonso covers the boy's face with a newspaper. For them people, most of us strangers, watch Sonia kneel by Petya, shot in the middle of the street. She picks up his spectacles, shining like 2 coins, balances them on his nose, observes this moment. How it convulses. Snow falls on the ducks, run into the streets like medics fought in a watch. Sonia kisses his forehead, her shadow hole torn the sky. It shimmers the park benches, porchlights we see. In Sonia's open mouth, the nakedness of the whole nation. She stretches out. Beside a little snowman napping in the middle of the street, speaking up with pride. The country once. Alfonso in snow. You're alive! I whispered to myself, the report found in a new distance. Thousand rams down the street, falls, fails to get up. I ran, etc. With my legs and my hands behind my pregnant wife, etc. Down Washington Street, I ran, etc. It only makes a few minutes. etc. to make a man. Darkness and insurgency begins. Our country woke up next morning and refused to hear soldiers. In the name of Peter, we refused. At 6 a.m., when soldiers complement the girls in the alley, the girls slide by, pointing to their ears. At 8, the bakery door shuts in the soldiers in one face, so he's the best customer. At 10, Mama Gala shouts, no one hears you. At the gates of the soldiers' barracks. By 11 a.m., arrests begin. Our hearing doesn't weaken, but something silent in us trenches. After curfew, families of the arrested have homemade puppets out of their windows. The streets empty, but for the squeaks of strings and the tap against the buildings of wooden fists and feet. In the ears of the town, snow falls. Also stands answerable. My people, you were really something fucking fun on the morning of the first arrest. Our men, once frightened and bound to their beds, now stand up like human masks. Daphne passes through us like a police whistle. Here's a night testify, each of us comes home. Shuts at the wall, at the stove, at the refrigerator, at himself, forgive me. I wasn't honest with you. Life to you, I stand answerable. I run, etc. With my legs and my hands, etc. I ran down Washington Street, etc. Whoever listens, thank you for the fatherland, my town. Thank you for our argument that ends. Thank you for deafness, Lord. Touch fire from a match you never lit. The map of bond and open mouths. I watch it. The sergeant there, to that boy, take iron and fire in his mouth, his face on the asphalt, that map of bone and open valves. It is the air, something in the air wants us too much. The earth is still, that our guards eat cucumber sandwiches. This first day, soldiers examine the years of bartenders, of accountants, of soldiers. They begin in silence, thus to soldiers. They tear Goroswa from her bed like a doll of a bus. Observe this moment, how it convulses. The body of the boy lies in the bare asphalt like a paper. The body of the boy lies on the asphalt like the body of a boy. I touch the walls, feel the pulse of the house, and I stare up wordless and do not know why I am alive. We tiptoe the city, Sonia and I, between leaders and guardians and iron gates, be courageous, we say, but no one is courageous as a sound we do not hear. Lift the birds of the water. Before the war, we made a child. I kissed a woman whose friends are the neighbors. She had a mole on her shoulder, which she displayed like a medal for bravery. Her trembling lips when come to bed. Her hair further falling in the middle of the conversation when come to bed. I woke it in my barber shop of those Yes, I see with her off to bed on the chair of my hairy arms, but parted lips, my parted lips, lying under the quilt sheets. Sonia, that is really soldiers aim at us. Soldiers aim at us. They fire. The crowd of women flees inside the nostrils of searchlights. My God, have a photograph of this. In the piazza's bright air, soldiers drag Peter's body and his head bound the stairs. I feel through my wife's shirt the shape of our child. Soldiers drag Peter up the stairs in homely darks. Venus philosophers understand everything and bark and bark. I, now on a breach with no camouflage of speech, a body wrapping the body of my pregnant wife tonight. We don't die, and don't die. The earth is still. A helicopter eyeballs my wife on earth. A man cannot lift a finger at the sky, because each man is already a finger flipped at the sky. Lullaby, lullaby. Little daughter, rain, water, snow, and branches protect you. White washes falls, and neighbors' hands. Oh, child of my April's little earth of 6 pounds, my white hair keeps you asleep. Lit. While the child sleeps, Sonia undresses. She scrubs me until I spit soapy water pig. She smiles. A man should smell better than his country. Such is the silence of a woman who speaks again. Silence, no, that silence is what movie says to speak. She throws my shoes and glasses in the air. I'm of deaf people and I have no country but a bus stop and an infant and a marriage bed. Sopping together, that is sacred to us. Watching each other's shoulders. You could fuck anyone. But with whom can you sing in water? Oh, I am bombardment. My body runs in a Leomont street, my clothes in a pillowcase. I look for a man who looks exactly like me, to give him my Sonia, my name, my shirt. It has begun. Neighbors climb the trolleys at the feature market, breaking all their moments in half. Trolleys parts like contestants in the sun. Pavel shot, I am so fucking beautiful, I cannot stand it. 2 boys still holding tomato sandwiches, hopping a trolley slide. Soldiers same at their faces, their ears. I can't find my wife, where is my pregnant wife? I, a body, an adult male, awaits to explode like a hand grenade. It has begun. I see the blue canary of my country. Big breadcrumbs from its feet and thighs. Big breadcrumbs from my neighbor's hair. The snow leaves the earth and falls straight up as it should. To have a country so important. To run into walls, into streetlights, into loved ones as one should. The blue canary of my country runs into walls, into streetlights, into loved ones. The blue canary of my country watches the legs at the one. Assim говорю. Assim говорю. Watch. Vassenka citizens do not know. They are evidence of happiness. In a time of war, Each is a repeated document of love for what God that has something to tell us that not even they can hear. Climb a roof in the central square of this bombed out city, you will see one neighbor gives a cigarette, another gives a dog a pint of sunlit beer. You will find me, God, like a damn pigeon's beak, I am pecking every which way at astonishment. Firing squad. On balconies, sunlight, on poplars, sunlight, on our leaves. Today, no one is shooting. A girl cuts her hair with imaginary scissors, the scissors in sunlight, her hair in sunlight. Another girl nicks a pair of shoes from a sleeping soldier's covered with light. A soldier's wake and gape at us. Gaping at them, what do they see? Tonight, they shot 50 women at Lorna Street. I sit down to write and tell you what I know. A child learns a word by putting it in her mouth. A girl becomes a woman and a woman her body. They blame you for all sins and say, sick in the body. For doesn't live in the body. The townspeople watch and take Alfonso. Now, each of us is a witness stand. Vasilka watches us take 4 soldiers, draw Alfonso Brabinski on a sidewalk. We let them take. All of us cowards, what we don't say, we carry in our suitcases, our coat pockets, our nostrils. Across the streets, they watch him with fire hoses. First he screams, then he stops. So much sunlight, a t-shirt falls off a closest line, an old man stops, picks it up, presses it to his face. Neighbors line up to watch him drown on the sidewalk like a very well. Ta-da! In so much sunlight, each of us is a witness stand. They take Alfonso, and no one stands up. Our silence stands up for us. I'll read just one more poem and I'll be out of your hair, okay? This poem will bring it a lot closer home. It's called In a Time of Peace. Inhabitant of Earth for 40-something years, I once found myself in a peaceful country. I watched the neighbors open their phones to watch a cop demanding a man's driver license. And when the man reaches for his wallet, the cop shoots into the car window. Shoots. It is a peaceful country. We pocket our phones and go to the dentist to pick up the children from school to buy shampoo. And Basil, ours is a country in which a boy shot by police lies on the pavement for hours. We see in his open mouth the nakedness of the whole nation. We watch others, watch. The body of a boy lies on a pavement exactly like the body of a boy. This is a peaceful country, and it clips our citizens' bodies effortlessly, the way the president's wife trims her toenails. All of us still have to do the hard work of dentist appointments, of remembering to make a summer salad, basil, tomatoes, it is a joy, tomatoes and a little salt. This is a time of peace. I do not hear gunshots, but watch the birds splash over the backyards of the suburbs. How bright is the sky as the avenue spins on the taxis. How bright is the sky. Forgive me. How bright.
Awesome. Thank you, Ilya. That was amazing. All right, we are going to take a few minutes to write down questions. So maybe just like 2 minutes. People in the virtual world, go ahead and put your questions in the chat bar. And here in 2 minutes, I'm going to come back up here and interrupt everyone, and we'll go from there. All right.
I think I'll do the cards. All right, are you all ready to pass in cards? Anybody else got one? No. Anyone else?
All right, last call to the virtual world for questions. And we're gonna move on to Q&A. So we are super pleased to have not just one, but two excellent writers here, a part of this program tonight. Sara Novic holds an MFA from Columbia University, where she studied fiction and literary translation and lives in Philadelphia. She is the author of the novel Girl at War, which won an American Literary Association Alex Award, was an LA Times Book Prize finalist, and is available in 13 languages. Her nonfiction project, America is Immigrants, is short illustrated biographies of Americans hailing from all 193 plus countries. It is also available from Random House. Her second novel, True Biz, is forthcoming on March 15th, 2022, and has already been optioned for a TV adaptation starring deaf actress Millicent Simmons. Please welcome Sara Novic.
Thank you. Thank you everyone so much for having us here this evening. Is it okay if I breathe on you?
But everybody should keep wearing mask, please. First of all, let me just say again, it's an amazing book. I was just talking to somebody today about an image from this book by Sara that it's haunting me. It's an image of the beginning of war in former Yugoslavia, where Chotniks, which is a Yugoslavian form of neo-Nazis, began to attack people and do horrible things. And they were identified by their beards because they were conservative, or thought of themselves conservative, Eastern Orthodox, and they never shaved. So the amazing image in the book that just keeps haunting me is how the whole town men were immediately obsessed with shaving, so they wouldn't be like these people. So I hope in our country, to bring it back home, everybody wears masks so that we are not like those people.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I have a few questions that I have. And then we've collected some from the audience. So I'm going to sign the first one. Normally, the writing process can be very solitary or isolated work. What was it like collaborating with another artist? Has that influenced or changed the way you think as a writer?
Thank you. Thank you, James. I have to say that for somebody, and I'm sure you will relate to that experience, for somebody who grows up without ability to hear, and I didn't have hearing aids in the former USSR, you realize later on in life that your native language is not really English or Russian, but the language of images. And that is why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because my native language is the language of images. And coming to the US as a 16-year-old, I realized that poetry was the language in which I could still live through that experience. Even having hearing aids now in America, I've been able to communicate by watching people read lips, but also watching somebody behind them pat a cat or open a newspaper or be in an argument, and somebody else is stopping the car suddenly, and somebody falling from a bicycle, and all of that is a part of a sentence, a part of a conversation. And as a hard of hearing person or a deaf person, it's a daily part of your reality. It's a very visual, very touchable reality. All of that come back, okay, what do we learn when we speak to another artist like James, who did this amazing thing? is how physical our craft really is. It's amazing to me, and I talked to him earlier today, how he chose to portray what he did in different mediums. Some of it is in oil, some of it is in wax, some of it is in wood. And the medium, the form, is very much a content. There is this old quote in poetry: form is mere continuation of content, extension of content, which is attributed to Robert Creeley, as though later people found out, oh no, Creeley stole from Dennis Levertov, who said form is mere revelation of content. And it's so amazing to see it when an artist is sending you an image of a different artwork. Every other week or every other month, you get a different part of a story, but it is done through different mediums. And so for me, I'm learning this registers of feeling. I know the story, okay? But registers of feeling are so different when you can physically see it in a touchable material. And then what do I learn? Well, it makes me think, okay, what is my craft? Like, how does Walt Whitman learn from anaphora when he repeats the same phrase in the beginning of a line for pages and pages? I realized, oh, Walt Whitman does that to create a rhythm, but then he needs some kind of tension. So you look at the rest of the sentence, the rest of the line, and he has incredibly complex syntax. He rarely has simple sentences. Sentences are fireworks in Whitman. But I never really paid as much attention until I see, okay, this is one craft that's in something, but what's intention with it? And then I thought, well, what about alliteration and assonance? Or like images like the world of slumbering and liquid trees in Walt Whitman. And that is also intention with an anaphora. He enacts like the same way as here you have perspective, we have colors. But you know, when I looked at this, when James sent it to me and I just saw it on my iPhone, I didn't see so much what is happening in this far corner. But seeing it in a real time, this is huge on the rest of the painting. It is really impacts how I see it in person. But if you check the same thing on the website, you're not really going to notice it as much. Then just today, James showed me right here, it's one person whose face you can fully see, and this person is looking back at us. Somebody in a soldier's uniform. And James said, and that was me. I'm like, oh. You know what I'm saying? But the truth you told in the book, you have larger than life characters, Sonia and Alphonse and Mama Gala, and they do those incredible things. But that's not me. That's not the narrator. Okay, the narrator is one of the schmucks who watch and do nothing. Okay, this is very much a book about guilt, a book about not being done what needs to be done. And he really showed it, like right there. Okay, and that's an incredible thing to look in the mirror that sad, not having ever expected it, even having seen all the other from me. I just saw this today. Okay, so that's one of the ways to. It is, you're right, a very solid activity. We kind of like it that way, right? To my mind, an artist, or at least the poets I love, are those who write so beautifully enough, so eloquently enough, or strangely enough, awkwardly enough, that is can resonate to many people at the same time, privately, without having to shake their hands. I wonder how is it for you?
It's kind of the same. I feel like I write a book for 5 years. I sit alone.
Yeah.
I write. And then all of a sudden, it's getting published and out there for everyone. Everybody has an opinion, and really scary part about writing. But also the same kind of idea where people have, in conversation with readers, I learned something new about the story. So it's a similar experience.
Yeah, I guess I'm lucky. I'm married to another writer, so I'm alone but not alone. Every time she reads my stuff, I learn something new about what I write.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm very lucky.
When you first have that inkling of an idea, what does a poem look like for you? Does it usually start with an image, a word, or a feeling?
Thank you. You know, that's really kind of individual thing. Kind of starts with different things for different people. Like I speak about that to my wife, Katie Ferris, a lot. For her, it probably starts with music, an emotion married to music. For me, for the reasons I already mentioned, it was definitely an image. Even when I wrote in Russian before as a kid, and Russian is very formal, very strict kind of tradition, it was still the impulse was to kind of create a literary page with an image, a motion picture. It is just, and I never really thought of it logically until years later, but not having hearing aids, everything you see around you is motion pictures. It is not by choice. It is not like artistic ambition. It is a survival skill, very much so. And so I collect images the same way as probably James. I mean to collaborate, but not. I'm sure he thinks about green and red and blue right here and what they represent. And the same thing for a poet or a fiction writer. I'm sure the images that become a thing later, you kind of collect them. And when I have an emotion, I feel like I have like paint to paint it with. Because if I start with emotion, it's just going to be rhetoric. I need some poetic devices to speak through or with, to express emotion for me. But I realize it's different for every single human, you know.
Of course. One more for me, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience. One more question from her, and then she's going to turn it over to audience questions.
Oh, yeah, of course.
For this book, for Deaf Republic, you see the full story when it starts? Or was it more like you built upon it, poem by poem?
Sorry, can you speak it again?
Say it again. Right. For example, like do you have like affinity to a place or a character and narrative? Do you see that with like a more of a prose more than a poetry? How did you develop the project from those first poems into a full book with these thought lines?
You find a really big wall and you beat your head against it, and you hope that the wall will break and not your head. That's partly why it took so long. I wish I wasn't such a cocky little boy when I started, but I thought I could do it. You know, others could do it, so I could. But it was hard because I realized about myself. You know, writing, we learn about ourselves. I'm sure you know that. I realized that I write poem by poem. I don't write, you know, a narrative arc. I wish I did. And every time I changed the plot or like a character was born and died, I had to rewrite poetry. Every time I added a new line or a new image, I had to think about how will it work with the rest of the plot. Again, I'm very lucky to be married to someone who knows a lot more about fiction and narrative than I do. So it was, I was a student in a class taught by his first, who taught me a lot about not just, I guess, narrative, but hybrid work. What does hybrid genre do? And her theory on that was very much that we create hybrid work because the tradition hasn't provided us this form to express what must be expressed. And so we have to create a new form for that content to emerge. And I asked myself, okay, if that is the case, what is my content that needs to emerge? And I realized it very quickly that as anybody who was born in one place and lives in another, I'm writing very much towards my childhood, that's mostly positive, but also towards the reality in which I'm now in the United States. So the book is kind of, it's a fable. It's not a novel, it's a fable, a fairy tale, because that form allows me to speak to more than one time and place. It's not because, I decided to write a fairy tale or I decided to write a narrative. I need a way to speak to more than one place, because as any immigrant or refugee, you leave one food in one place and another food in another place. That's just your natural condition. If I just say, hello, I'm American, hello, my fellow Americans, how are you? That would be a lie, okay? If I just say, oh, hi, I'm Russian, or a Russian Jew from Ukraine, it would be half truth because I actually live in Atlanta, okay? So I needed to find a form that would express both. And that is the part for all of us. Sometimes I remember Michael and Dasha speaking, and she said, I just walk around my room for 3 years and write 300 pages and then I figure out what they are. And at that time, I'm like, are you serious? Yeah, she was probably very serious. It's kind of, you learn, and maybe not after 300 pages, but probably after 50. You really kind of learn by touch. How is that for you? How do you know that you're writing a novel?
You never know. I always think that I'm writing a short story, but then the story doesn't stop. The story continues. And that's how I wrote the book that you have with you. And that's how I wrote the other 2 books as well, I guess. Similar to you. A little bit, you start in the dark and you kind of feel your way through it. Then as you keep writing, it becomes a little bit more clear. So that's kind of how it works for me.
It's like a short story that doesn't want to end.
Exactly. Sometimes I think I'm finished, I'm going to wrap it up. And then a character comes up and says to me, hey, and I'm like, oh, all right. And I get back to writing that story again.
They say that a poem is never finished, it's abandoned. It sounds like a short story, it's never finished, it becomes a novel.
I would have to concur. The question says, the experience of hearing, does it feel different than reading on the page? People experience your poetry auditorially when you speak. So what do you think about the role of speaking and reading your poems?
Thank you. There are probably a number of different answers to this. Thank you for asking the question, whoever you are. There's probably more than one answer to the question. This book is very much about silence and spaces and how the unspoken has a lot more to say. So that is one of the messages I wanted to bring across. Now, reading aloud for me has to do with the fact that I'm a person who is very easily bored. And when I have to run around with the same book for a number of years, with this book, it's already been 3 years. With my previous book, it's been over 10 years. Reading from the same poems, I just begin to watch the fly, you know? And in order for me not to be bored, I decided that, hey, I cannot change the content, but I can still change the syntax. I can still change the intonation. There's a lot that I can still do with my body to make me feel like I'm still writing this poem. And that, in the end, all of us who are poets, that's what we want to do. We don't want to be sitting in this chair and talking about writing. We want to be writing. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. And so poetry is an excuse to write another draft. It's a formal exercise. It's in some ways like translation or like writing a sonnet. You have 14 lines, that's it. You cannot have 12 and you cannot have 17. You got to fit in. What can you do? A great poet who I wish would be a little better known these days, Tom Gunn once said, every sonnet is a plot against the sonnet. Every sonnet is a plot against the sonnet. So every poetry reading is a plot against poetry reading. That's one way of saying it. Another way of saying it would be, look, I have 3 wonderful nephews. I know you have wonderful kids. I saw your Instagram, great pictures, beautiful. So
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with the world. So if you have a child, you know that when you're reading a fairy tale or any story to your child, if you start reading it like a chemistry lecture, boom, 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 your child is gonna forget that I have a computer game to play. Okay, so there is an, I don't want to say ancient tradition because it sounds bombastic, but there is organic human need. Look at your child and your child will tell you. Organic human need for a spell to be cast. That's what poems and stories are, from the very beginning of time. You know, we are taught when we go to college or when we are in high school that, you know, all literature comes out of one man's mouth in Greece. He had a beard and his name was Homer. That's true, partly true, of course. But literature also comes from wailing songs. Women who are burying the dead. It comes from lullabies. It comes from prayer songs. The language had power to cast a spell. And we must remember it because that's our medium of life. We all have minimum, however, is our minimum, but maximum about a century. Nobody lives longer than a century, right? Within the century, we're given a chance to do something with words, with the medium that we have. So why are we giving up magic, for God's sake? Yes.
How do you translate silence to verbal medium, into a verbal medium?
Okay. Well, I would like you to tell me that. I don't know. I think partly why we write, all of us, is to figure that out. Partly why I was writing this book specifically was to figure that out. The word silence is a very loaded word. It has many different meanings. It would particularly have many different meanings for deaf people, as I'm sure Sarah would tell you even more than I would, on the subject, because when I say the word deaf people, what does it even mean? For the mainstream culture, it means just everybody who can't hear. In reality, there are many, many deaf cultures. The deaf culture with a capital D, which is a great culture inside the United States that should be far better known and far more centered in conversation. There are also hard of hearing people like myself who are 1 foot there, 1 foot here, you know, and trying to make it the best we can. Okay, there's also, just as we speak, the whole amazing new literature is happening in a deaf-blind culture. The wonderful poets writing amazing work in a deaf-blind language, tactile ASL, which is relatively new medium. And it is amazing to know like how many poetic traditions do you know that are about maximum 50 years old? Well, it is happening in tactile ASL. So there are many takes on what silence is. Most deaf people I have ever speak to, I make a point of actually asking, do you believe in silence? And most deaf or hard of hearing people say, maybe not, probably not, but, you know, because what does silence mean to you? We speak against silence, but it's a silence that moves us to speak if we are a creative writer, right? But silence, if you're a deaf person, is a creation of the hearing. It is something that you hear in the world to have a deaf person, that there is silence. I'm not sure there is silence. Okay, but if you think about Western culture, and I speak specifically for Western culture, which is what I'm educated in, theology, philosophy, psychology has hundreds and hundreds of bookshelves full of books discussing what the hell silence is. Poetry, okay, the whole dissertations, PhDs, careers, tenures are based on this theological, philosophical, political question. What happens if we for a moment stop and say, look, the 8% of people in the world, deaf and hard of hearing people, who actually don't believe it? What the hell is your philosophy, your theology, your psychology that stakes everything and the fact that silence exists? Think about that. But of course, what we're really talking about is a kind of many different ways of expressing what a loneliness is, what an emptiness is, what a human need for communion is. And I kind of love that we don't have a set idea or a set term. And I would rather integrate the word silence in many different perspectives. That is when it becomes fresh and interesting and not set in stone. Because we don't know what God is. We don't know why we are alive. We don't know where we go, where we die. And the unknown is what is interesting. The questions.
Beautifully said. I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you to everybody here in the audience as well. Ilya has books for sale out in the lobby.
Please get Sarah's book.